The Virunga rainforest pulsed with the dense humidity of an approaching storm. Deep within its tangled green heart, a young woman named Ava trudged silently through the undergrowth, her boots squelching in the soft earth. A field primatologist with a gentle voice and fierce determination, Ava had spent the last 3 years studying mountain gorillas in the Democratic Republic of Congo. She had come to understand their behaviors, their hierarchies, and even their individual quirks, but nothing had prepared her for the sight she stumbled upon that day. Near a ravine, tucked beneath the drooping leaves of a breadfruit tree, lay a young male gorilla. His chest rose and fell in shallow, strained breaths. His fur was matted, eyes sunken and dull. Flies clung to the crusted wounds on his arms and legs. Judging by his size and build, he was barely 4 years old, a juvenile who should have still been with his troop. But he was alone. And dying. Ava dropped to her knees, her voice barely a whisper. "Hey, buddy, you're okay now." She pulled out her satellite phone with trembling fingers and radioed her team. Within an hour, a field rescue unit arrived. They sedated the young gorilla and transported him to the sanctuary's veterinary facility nestled on the edge of the forest. They named him Bako, meaning one who survives, in the local dialect. The first few weeks were touch and go. Bako refused food at first, terrified of the strange environment. Ava stayed with him, sleeping just outside his enclosure, speaking softly through the mesh. She brought him ripe figs, sang to him in a low hum, and made no sudden movements. Slowly, Bako began to respond. He reached for fruit through the bars. He no longer growled when Ava approached. When he first touched her hand, tentatively, with the tips of his long fingers, Ava cried silently. Every day, she sat near his enclosure, reading scientific papers aloud or just talking to him about the forest. Bako would sit across from her, watching intently, his amber eyes blinking slowly. As his strength returned, so did his spirit. He began to vocalize more, his soft grunts signaling curiosity. He learned to play again, swinging on rope strung through his habitat. And he sought out Ava, pressing his forehead gently to the mesh whenever she arrived. Months passed. Bako grew larger and stronger. His fur regained its sheen, and the hollowness faded from his gaze. Ava and her team worked tirelessly to prepare him for reintroduction to the wild. They kept human contact minimal, except for her. Bako resisted other handlers, but he trusted Ava completely. There was a moment, one stormy afternoon, when thunder cracked above the trees and Bako, frightened, bolted into the corner of his enclosure. Ava rushed in. She shouldn't have, but her instincts took over. She sat down beside him, speaking softly, her presence steadying him. Instead of retreating, Bako leaned into her, his large hand resting on her knee. That night, the staff debated her closeness to him. If he gets too attached, one warned, he may never leave. But Ava knew the wild still called to him. Bako often stared longingly toward the edge of the forest during their walks outside. He sniffed the wind. He climbed the tallest structures to look beyond the trees. He belonged out there. As the reintroduction window approached, Ava's chest ached with dread. The plan was to transport Bako deep into a protected region where a nearby troop had been sighted. If accepted, he could live the life nature had intended for him. But would he let go? Would she? 6 months had passed since Bako had been released into the protected highlands of Kahuzi-Biega National Park. Ava visited the edge of the sanctuary often, scanning the dense forest for any sign of the silverback she had raised like a son. Though the park rangers had occasionally spotted him from a distance, Bako had become fully wild, strong, confident, and increasingly elusive. Still, Ava never stopped hoping. Then, in early autumn, tragedy struck. A massive landslide, triggered by days of relentless rain, crashed through part of the forest, toppling trees and sweeping away trails. The park's ranger station reported several injuries to animals, and there were fears that one of the smaller gorilla groups had been affected. Ava's heart sank at the news. Her first thought was of Bako. Despite her supervisor's concerns, Ava volunteered to join the ranger team assigned to search the affected area. They hiked for hours through the slick, treacherous terrain. The destruction was severe: fallen trees, deep mud, and broken paths. The rangers called out softly, listening for movement. Most of the wildlife had fled or gone silent. Then, as they passed a clearing where the landslide had scoured the earth, Ava heard a familiar low grunt. She froze. From behind a cracked bamboo grove, Bako emerged. His fur was matted with mud, and a long gash ran along his shoulder. He limped slightly but stood tall. His amber eyes met Ava's, and for a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Bako let out a soft, chesty grunt, not a threat, but a greeting. A memory. Ava's eyes filled with tears. She stepped forward slowly, arms lowered, speaking softly in the old calming tone she used when he was just a baby. To everyone's astonishment, Bako didn't retreat. He knelt and reached out with one powerful hand, resting it on the ground before her. Ava approached him and saw the pain in his eyes, the torn muscle along his arm. He had survived, but just barely. Ava quickly called in for veterinary assistance. With great care, the team sedated Bako and treated his wounds. As he rested in a makeshift shelter built under a giant fig tree, Ava stayed beside him, stroking his fur and whispering stories of the forest he loved. For the first time since his release, he seemed at peace. But Bako wasn't the only one affected by the landslide. The rangers found signs of poachers taking advantage of the chaos. One of the younger gorillas had been caught in a crude net trap, terrified and dehydrated. While the team freed and treated the juvenile, Bako, now alert and recovering, sat nearby watching. When the young gorilla stumbled and fell, Bako did something that took everyone by surprise. He gently lifted the small gorilla and carried him to Ava. That moment made headlines in conservation circles. Photos of the once orphaned silverback rescuing another in need, with his human caretaker at his side, spread across the globe. Bako had not only survived the wild, he had grown into a protector. After several more days of recovery, Bako was strong enough to return to the forest. But he did something no one expected. Every few weeks, he would return to the edge of the reserve, to the same grove where Ava had once fed him milk and taught him the forest secrets. Sometimes he brought fruit. Sometimes he simply watched her from a distance, then vanished into the trees. And Ava, always patient, would sit quietly and wait, never calling him, never approaching, just honoring the bond they shared. In time, Bako became a legend among the park rangers. Not just as a rescued gorilla, but as a leader among his kind, one who remembered the hand that saved him and, in turn, extended that kindness to others. Their story became a symbol of hope in conservation, a testament to what trust, patience, and love could do in even the harshest corners of the wild. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next episodes.